economic development and also institutional frameworks across Latin America. Originally, the organization was started and currently based in Argentina, and it works in a way of conducting the research, hosting events, and collaborative projects with global partners. We are working with think tanks, we are working with academics, we are working with various educational institutions, and also media organizations that help us to promote evidence-based policies that also we make sure that encourage sustainable growth and social progress. We also expanded to other regions with the name of We Are Innovation. So We Are Innovation is the global network that currently has over 45 global partners and institutions. We are working with various foundations, NGOs in Europe, in Africa, Asia, and the US. And we are making sure that we are promoting innovative solutions in the region. So before I make the big announcement, I would like to tell you more about what's currently going on in Argentina and why Argentina is a decent hub for introducing and working on innovations. So the current situation in Argentina is that with Milei coming to presidency, is that Argentina is undergoing through major transformations. And of course, the current administration has launched a comprehensive deregulation program. And that basically means that it is dismantling hundreds of restrictive regulations that were making a negative impact on business growth and, of course, on innovation as well. So, unfortunately, currently inflation remains quite high and poverty indicators are still concerning. But yet, we can see the commitment from the Argentinian government in order to market liberalization, in order to streamline the bureaucratic processes, and also to reform the tax system, which in fact gives Argentina the break from prior interventionist policies. So Argentina, with current updates, becoming quite a fertile soil for innovation. The first field that is critical for Argentina and that has its technological advances is agriculture and agricultural businesses. So currently the Argentina's agricultural landscape is increasingly defined by precision farming techniques, where the use of such technologies of drones, but also the AI and Internet of Things application are transforming the practices. So currently the country's status of agricultural powerhouse is quite enhanced by agro-industrial export sector. And currently it has, of course, naturally strengths in beef, wine, also soy-based products, and they are being augmented by major supply chain solutions that include blockchain technology that are advancing technological solutions for enhanced traceability and also quality assurance. But it's not only that, and the next big thing in Argentina that is growing is the e-commerce and its digital marketplace. So Argentina's digital commerce landscape has been fundamentally and successfully transformed by the success of institutions and platforms like Mercado Libre. It is a homegrown tech giant that has become Latin America's leading e-commerce platform. So it causes a major digital revolution that allows businesses of different sizes to embrace online sales channels and also the digital payment solutions, which are making lots of business transactions and processes much easier. And this rapid growth in e-commerce also catalyzes innovations in logistics and delivery services, so all the processes that come together. Moreover, currently the digital marketplace ecosystem has become a powerful enabler for Argentina's international trade aspirations, and it allows Argentina to explore new platforms, to have the access to the new tools that also help small and medium-sized enterprises to see how they can function in the global cross-border commerce. Another thing that is becoming quite big in Argentina is mining and lithium extraction. So Argentina's position with the coveted lithium triangle also emerges as a crucial strategic advantage in the global transition to clean energy, with the country's vast lithium reserves attracting substantial international investment. Another thing that is growing in Argentina is its tourism and ecotourism. Argentina is quite diverse with richer cultural heritage and innovative digital solutions. And all that, together with the affordability of living there, allows Argentina to become a hub for digital nomads. And it offers lots of sophisticated co-working spaces. It also streamlines the obtainance of visa for foreigners, and it also robust the digital infrastructure that allows to grow this remote community, to bring foreigners from across the world, and of course to have more meaningful discussions and lead to more globalization. Argentina combines lots of diversity, and the country is quite stretched. So from the Pampas grasslands to the Andes Mountains, it features attraction in the north and south, and its capital, Buenos Aires, is the birthplace of lots of football culture that some of you might enjoy. It is the birthplace of tango. It is very famous for its high quality food and good wine. So this kind of natural mix of landmarks and cultural heritage also makes Argentina quite attractive for global tourists. Now, speaking of challenges and opportunities that Argentina also has, one of it is actually the current deregulation process and the program that is being incentivized by the current government, which is leading to a major economic shift. So with hundreds of regulations being eliminated or simplified since late 2023, the initiatives on deregulation also helps to reduce the bureaucratic barriers. It allows to streamline business processes. It also allows to attract investment, which is necessary for the sustainable economic growth. And that brings us to the next point, the growth of the fintech sector. I'm very keen on this field on my own, and I'm very happy to see that currently Argentina is becoming quite a dynamic hub for that, because currently, and it of course comes in complex with the deregulations, the country is witnessing introducing more digital payment solutions. It also doing big in cryptocurrency adoption, in digital banking platforms that are also necessary, and they bring more of the financial inclusion. It is the high smartphone penetration, and it combines the sustainable approach with new technologies that help to work on the historical challenges with traditional banking access. So, with agricultural sector that I already touched base upon, Argentina keeps emerging as agricultural technological innovation that combines its traditional farming strength with more of digitalization. So that includes the drones, that include the AI-driven machinery, and that, of course, can help to optimize the crop yields. It allows to resource the efficiency of the niche. And this technological revolution also extends to the entire value chain, from soil analysis to harvest logistics, with blockchain technology ensuring that there is enough of traceability for international markets as well. Another thing that is quite important for the economic growth is the intellectual property and life sciences landscape that is also experiencing the significant transformation. So Argentina positions to become a regional hub for biotechnology and for pharmaceutical innovation, for healthcare systems being innovated. So recent reforms in patent protection and regulatory frameworks have begun attracting increased investment in research and development, particularly in areas like medical devices and pharmaceutical development. So local research institutions and startups are forming partnerships with global companies, and also they develop the homegrown solutions for regional health challenges. Another thing that is important is that Argentina, particularly the capital, Buenos Aires, has established itself as one of Latin America's blockchain powerhouses, and that allows the local developers to gain international recognition, to create solutions in decentralized finance, and to establish the local companies that implement blockchain technologies to enhance the transparency in agricultural exports, in real estate transactions, and also in legal system and legal documents. So this scene is complemented by a growing network of blockchain-focused co-working spaces, of course, industry meetups, discussions, growing innovation hubs where traditional industries are exploring blockchain applications for different fields of their operations. So that is making Buenos Aires quite a notable case study in how markets can lead in innovation. With that being said, we are very happy to announce that together with the GTIPA, we are planning to co-host the GTIPA Summit 2025 in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So we are currently confirming the exact dates, but so far we plan for May 2025. So please stay tuned with the newsletter and all the information that we are planning to share. But we are very keen on seeing you in Argentina and to explore the ways how innovation can be exercised together and how the global cooperation can lead to better and more efficient solutions worldwide. Of course, there is the annual report, the crowdsourced report, and we suggest the topic to be explored in 2025, the 3 instances of deregulation that have unblocked innovation in your country over the past years. So thank you so much for your attention. I would be happy to talk to you in person more after we finish the panel discussions, and looking forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. That was fantastic. Guys, what I was we've been talking informally. It's September. Is that, are we, some people seem to suggest May might feel a little close to.
Be a little clearer. What do you mean September what?
For the timing of our summit next year.
Steve is trying to ask
Does.
You kind of jumped in the middle there. You're asking what people think of the dates.
What are your reactions to May?
September maybe it's better.
September would be better. Okay.
How's the weather in September?
Discuss that after summit, so.
Yeah. Okay. So I do think that's a little soon. Okay.
I think we should ask her what her preferences. We have to keep her in mind. Do you have any particular? I mean, because you're the host, so definitely you have the prerogative. If you tell exactly what helps you, whereas flexible in September, that's one scenario. If logistic and otherwise a particular month is more suitable, feel free to tell us.
So I think the best way to operate for us to discuss it with our team that is based in Latin America because we are operating throughout the continents and to align on the agenda we are planning for 2025. So I think that we will be able to finalize it in the upcoming 2 weeks and then we will be able to say the exact date.
So you're
So-
flexible, you're open to it.
Yeah, sounds good. We just wanted to get everybody's feedback on how this was looking and understand your schedules as well, because part of this is finding dates that work for y'all and we can get everybody there. Okay, great. Tanya, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, and to you and Federico. Yeah, a round of applause again. Three final things. We do have a GTIPA WhatsApp group if you're not on it, and folks like Queen and Peter, you're new, so you may not be. If you want to be, Adriana manages getting people on WhatsApp. So Adriana will get you on our WhatsApp group.
What happens when you're in WhatsApp?
Well, she knows technology. Okay, number two, as you know, in collaboration with We Are Innovation, we're now doing the second Tuesday of every month at 9 a.m., our Innovation and Prosperity Hub. I think what's nice is doing it with them. There's a critical mass between now the number of think tanks across the two networks that we can monthly show new content. So just to say that's an important part of the Alliance, so if you would put that on your calendars and plan to be with us if you can, the second Tuesday of every month, that's great. And hopefully all of you in the coming months will take the opportunity to present recent research. Sean, thank you for doing so, and the Hungarians just did. And so then just wanted to ask for just a GTIPA touch point. There's a quarterly webinar. Does that work for y'all? Is that enough to call us together once a quarter at least online? And okay, I think then that works well with the Prosperity Hub, but then just us once a quarter. We did a great session last year where a colleague of mine, Dan Castro, who leads our AI team, did a great presentation on how think tanks can leverage AI in their operations. I'll ask Dan to reprise that presentation in the year ahead, because then you can invite members of your organization to come see it, because it helps your staff. I'll plan as well, a guy named Randolph Court, who's our Chief Operating Officer, is really good at like media outreach strategies. So if that's useful, maybe I'll ask some of my colleagues just to present some of ITIF strategies for media and press and congressional outreach. Adriana can join, and you can do a presentation on using social media effectively. And yeah, at some point we'll do a webinar. But to that point, like if y'all want to contribute to such a webinar, if you have people in your think tank who are doing really good things on just operations or strategy, just Mark made the good point that we should do a better job of learning from one another about think tank operations and management and outreach. So let's make that part of what we want to achieve more in the year ahead, okay? So, please, Peter. There is a calendar webinar for the Tuesday meeting, which is a standing one, and quarterly. Okay, and then the last thing. We've had GTIPA committees in the past. Is that, we never do it. It's not, do we?
Well, if you give somebody the responsibility, then it's not all on your shoulders. You don't become the one point of potential failure, which you don't fail often, but
Dude.
you've got a lot on your plate, and so if you give somebody else the responsibility, say, of putting together programs at the quarterly meeting about think tank operations, like the communications thing you said, and the other, that what's the worst that can happen? They don't do it as well as you would have that year, but then there's somebody the next year who picks it up and does it even better. that way, that's one less thing you have to organize. And gets everyone more engaged in the alliance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, committees can get bureaucratic and silly, but they also can be very productive and helpful because you divide and share the labor, right? And other people have creative ideas and devote some time to it. It seems like a fair thing to do, to take some of the burden off of you and a couple of others.
Deregulate.
I like that. Okay. So let's have a communications committee to help me. Adriana, you're on it, and you're.
Should I think you need this? Well, we can. Yeah, at least you don't have to try to be loud.
So that I think, Stephen, that you can be more precise on that, but we also have a new person that will be in charge of our communication activities. Austin, am I right?
Yeah.
So that's basically what he is doing. He took over a little bit and he's active on LinkedIn. We are trying to be more active on X as well. We were also thinking about being more active on Facebook, but so far we had some troubles to do that. Some technical issues. And from what I understood, Austin would be the person in charge now of our communication activities. Of course, everyone can support him, and what I really encourage you to do is to use this opportunity and the social media channels that we have as an alliance, as a platform as well for you to promote your papers, your conferences, interesting activities of yours that might be of interest for other GTIPA members as well. So it's a great platform for you to share with us what you do. And then I would love it to go more viral, and to extend our visibility on social media, which is still an issue and still a challenge for us. But without a commitment from every GTIPA member, it will be extremely difficult to do that alone. So just please invite your coworkers, your friends, your partners to observe us on the social media, to like our posts, to share our posts. That would be really of help.
Great. Okay. So if anybody wants to join the communications committee, let Adriana and I know. Okay. That's great. Guys, thanks for being part of the alliance. I hope it's adding value for you. I really enjoy doing it, and we'll keep it going. All right. Great.
Thank you, Stephen. And I think now, Stephen, if you allow us, we can go live and start something around the itinerary which we are holding. That was wonderful, in fact. So we can start the live streaming, and then we should begin with the Shiv Nadi University's mini video, and if the time permits, then I'll just take some more dig into the visuals of university. I hope you'll like it. So Utkarsh, can we have that? We are about to put that. So I hope everyone knows about the background of Shiv Nadi University. Okay. So we are part of Shiv Nadi Foundation, which is Mr. Nada's philanthropic initiative. And we have multiple other organizations, and a lot of stalls of those organizations are set up outside. Right after our sessions, when they are over, we'll take a round. So you can see in the itinerary there is a lab visit. But before that, we have tried to bring all those good things about various departments which are possible through exhibits outside. So a lot of efforts and a lot of evening discussions, and then we have put up something. I hope you like it. Meet those people. They are presenting their innovation research, and then we'll take you around the labs. There is one very interesting initiative by how to bring cluster skill development by HCL Foundation as well as Shivnada Foundation. So there are people who are making a lot of things, and these women and men are brought into cluster. Then they are skilled to make these products and get some employment generated by selling out these products. So we have also invited them. There is Habitat Trust, which is a very unique proposition of saving the environment and saving the species who are going extinct, and they are doing a lot of efforts. There is a stall of Habitat Trust also, and that has been awarded by the President of India also, how they are doing a wonderful work. We have a stall by Shiksha Initiative, which is in adult literacy. If you read about India, then one of the gap is the education sector and how the underprivileged are and are not able to get the right kind of education. So this is a very unique initiative where they bring the adults to bring, and they have amazing stories of how these people in their later ages have learned to read and write. Very emotional and touching stories. Maybe I'll tell that individually. There's a stall there for them. And then each department, we have 4 schools in university. The management, the engineering, social sciences, and the natural sciences. So we have tried to bring those departments in form of stalls out there. And then we have set up some lab visits. There'll be, my team has tried to put in a lot of efforts so that they can take you around to the best labs. As I was talking about the biodiversity initiative in the university, we have a biodiversity park, and there is a butterfly park. So we'll try to bring you to that place at the right time so that you witness the best visuals of these flowers and the butterflies. Let's see if we are lucky to have more and more. And I suppose you have also seen the birds on the lake during your tea break, and something more during your lunchtime. We have the same place. We'll be going back. As discussed during our conversation, you wanted to know about the number of students who are here in the university, the faculty numbers, and the departments. I have brought this on a slide. As you can see, this campus is 286 acres. We have 150 plus labs, 6 research centers, 300 plus faculty members. We have about 9,000 sports complex and around 2,500 plus student count here. So we have, this is a fully residential campus, and once you go around, you can see, I also stay on the campus, by the way. So that's a quick thing. Can we have the next slide? Okay, so this is some of the rankings and details, how Shivnada University is nicely performing in terms of technology, business, and felicitation and affiliations and stuff. So that's it from my side. With this, I would like to move to our next segment. I have a very, very interesting organization's head and representative, Ms. Reema Nanavati, sitting with us. I'll just quickly read about the organization, which is SEWA, which is empowering grassroots innovation, and it is an initiative in revolutionizing the changes in lives from, as I mentioned, there were a lot of women and people who were not able to get employed back at home. So this is a very, very transforming initiative. They are creative and artistic people who are making handcraft things, and the SEWA organization is mobilizing them for a better employment and, of course, a better products for the society. So this organization is working since 1972, and today it stands as global symbol of self-reliance. I'm honored to invite Ms. Reema Nanavati, the director of SEWA, an organization that has empowered over 2 million women in India, to give the first keynote address of the day. So Ms. Nanavati, I'll talk about a little bit about you also. So Ms. Nanavati is there with the Seva, I think, since 1999 and has empowered 1.7 million informal women workers through 4,813 self-help groups, 160 cooperatives, and 15 economic federations across India and South Asia. She leads the Seva's ICT initiatives as well, connecting women farmers of global markets via custom mobile apps and retail platforms. A member of the World Bank's Advisory Council on Gender and ILO's high-level Global Commission on Future of Work. She also advises the UN and Energy and SDGs. Awarded India's Padma Shri in 2013. Her work focuses on employment and self-reliance for women workers. Ms. Nanavati, can you just join us on the stage? Thank you so much. Team, can we have the lights more? Would you like to use the mic with this one?
Sure.
You can sit and talk also if that's comfortable.
That's fine. People just may not be able to see me, but that's okay.
Yes, that's what.
That's okay. Do you want me to close?
Yes,
this?
ma'am, you can sit and maybe. I think they have made it a little more taller. Even I have to. Yeah. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you very much. It is indeed my honor. Thank you, Rajaji, for inviting me. I will be talking here on behalf of Seva's 3 million women workers, all from the informal economy of our country. These women workers are economically very active, contribute to about 50% of country's national savings and 62% of the country's GDP. Yet, the reality is that their work is very often not counted as work, and therefore they remain at the margins and excluded from major policies, often even trade policies as well. 93% of the workforce in India is in the informal sector. Therefore, we are the mainstream. As Shibaji just said, we were established in 1972 by our founder Ela Bhatt from the city of Ahmedabad, which was known as the Manchester of India. We were the hub of the textile industry and manufacturing in the country, and that is where we are headquartered. We have about 3 million members today from across the 18 states of the country. And we also work in the neighboring countries of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Maldives. Our goals are full employment and self-reliance of our members. We also believe that poverty is a form of violence with the consent of the society. And therefore, we come together as poor, as women, and as workers in our fight against poverty. And innovations are our coping and survival strategy. By full employment, we mean work and income security for our members, access to basic support services, which is healthcare, childcare, insurance, and shelter, and access to food security. We work on a very holistic and integrated approach, and such an approach must include women-owned asset creation, especially home ownership, because for a majority of the informal sector, their home is their workplace, vocational and leadership capacity building and support services, including healthcare, childcare, and nutrition. In addition to building the collective strength and bargaining power of the women, this approach also ensures that every woman saves, plans for old age, and has access to healthcare and nutrition, giving women a voice through the self-confidence that comes from economic independence is very empowering for women. Women therefore have now their identity. They are able to participate in the decision-making within the household in the first place, and then they are able to speak up in front of the village council or the district head, the government officials, or wherever work would take them to. The members of SEVA depend on multiple trades for survival, and therefore the informal sector workers as a whole. When there is surplus of labor and less of employment opportunities in a country like ours, very often the workers have to create alternative employment and livelihood opportunities, which then go to become enterprises owned and managed by the women workers themselves. Therefore, our objective at SEVA is that the members just don't remain workers or producers, but become owners and managers of their own trades and enterprises. And this is one of our fundamental innovations. All enterprises at SEVA have the members as the shareholders, and they are also, the boards of all the enterprises are elected from the shareholders. The organizational design innovation, therefore, is one of our very first organization was the SEVA Cooperative Bank, set up in 1974. The SEVA Bank has been providing banking services to these poor, illiterate, self-employed women and has become a viable financial entity. The term microfinance came much later, but the activity of including the micro person of a society in financial services was started by SEVA Bank by recognizing the viability of their small enterprises and by tailoring the banking norms to the needs of the poor micro producer under the regulations of the regulator of the country. In an environment where cooperatives have been struggling, SEVA Bank has been a successful cooperative which provides dividend to the shareholders year after year, up to 20%. And today we have more than 175,000 member shareholders. The reason is simple. It is decentralized leadership and a strong commitment of its women members to improve their own lives and livelihoods through individual and collective efforts. How can service providers, be they health workers or childcare workers or midwives, also make their livelihood sustainable? And therefore, we also have cooperatives of childcare workers, healthcare workers, midwives, land regenerators, which have now federated and formed a national level cooperative federations, which then provides technical services, managerial and financial services to these cooperatives. As Shibaji mentioned, we also have organized some 30,000 artisans across the country into a trade facilitation center, which connects the traditional skills of the artisans in different states, not only to the market. We have our own rural fashion brand as well as a national fashion brand, and we cater to national and international fashion houses. Having learned from the experiences of the SEVA Trade Facilitation Center, we went on to replicate the model to organize the home-based artisans and garment workers in the countries of South Asia. These are known as the SAARC Business Association of Home-Based Workers. This helps us build regional trade integration as well. Yes, but this was not enough, and climate shocks have been increasing year after year. And we were therefore forced to work on climate innovations when SEVA was celebrating our 50 years of organizing. We all know that climate shocks disproportionately affect the women workers in the informal economy. And therefore, we launched our national campaign on women-led climate action. We call it the Building Cleaner Skies campaign, or in our language as Swachh Akash campaign. Some innovations that emerged and led to mitigation and resilience building are setting up the first ever women-owned and managed solar park, which generates 2.7 megawatt of energy. This is owned by the poorest of the poor workers in India, the salt pan workers in the deserts of Gujarat. While switching over from diesel engines to solar pumps for 8 months of the salt producing season, these workers borrowed from the nationalized banks, and the saving by having lower consumption or no consumption of diesel oil enabled them to repay back the loans. However, during the 4 months, which is the off season for salt production, how do these workers have a steady source of income? And that's where we set up this solar park. It generates about 2.7 megawatts of energy, which is sold to the grid. And it is now bringing income to these workers during the lean season. This is a model of innovation of how do we have distributed energy solutions which are owned and managed by the poor women workers. We also needed climate financial innovations for the women workers, as in the event of any climate shock, unless and until the work and income are stabilized, the members are therefore then able to bounce back. They become less vulnerable, and therefore we have set up a livelihood recovery and resilience fund which provides access to finance. This is a blended finance facility which provides credit guarantee and FLDG so that you are able to unlock capital from the mainstream market. Thus, it also leads at an intersection of 3 major issues: poverty alleviation, financial inclusion, and climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. We are now converting this into a climate risk management facility with products such as the parametric climate insurance, contingency loans, and having access to other instruments as well. I would just in the end like to share some of the lessons which are coming out from our 5 decades of experience. Having organized the informal sector women workers for over 5 decades now, and being a member of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, I think the lesson is to bring human-centered approach to work. When workers and their families have work, decent work in their hands, they are able to fight poverty. It leads to peace building, which we all need very badly in the current situation. We call it as women, work, and peace. This is possible by building local decentralized supply chains, by building worker-owned cooperatives and collectives, making producers the owners and managers. This is the journey of our 3 million members. But this has also resulted into building an economy of nurturance, building sisterhood and solidarity. Let me share what we mean by the economy of nurturance. It is an economy that generates employment locally in such a way that it does not snatch away someone else's employment. It is not an exploitative economy, which we all have been experiencing. It generates employment that assures and secures the 6 basic needs: food, clothing, shelter, and access to healthcare, education, and financial services. This is possible when we build startups or enterprises that are owned and managed by the local communities. It is possible when the supply chain is local and decentralized, when the supply chain cuts down the distance between the producer and the consumer. We call it as the 100 miles approach to building an economy of nurturance. I would like to make 3 suggestions to the Global Trade and Innovation platform. 1, global trade and innovation must look at its impact on each other. 2, global trade and innovation must look at its impact on local trade and innovations. Does it encourage or does it kill millions of local trades and innovations on which the economy thrives? And 3, Together, local and global trade and innovation actions, how can they save us all, this planet, humans, and the nature from extinction? Lastly, I'm also here wondering how can GTIPA or the Shiv Nadar University work on strengthening the innovations of these informal sector workers who are increasing by the day, not only in India, but also in the other regions which I was just listening to. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity.
So thank you, Rima Ben. That was lovely and resonates very well with what Tatiana said about innovation at the grassroots level that Argentina is also doing. Questions, please? Yes, there's a question. Mike.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Rima, ma'am. Ma'am, with the 3 million workers working across, you talked about the decentralized leadership for the same. Definitely it provides agility and empowerment for it, but with your vast experience and knowledge, would like to understand how you are able to maintain the decentralized leadership in Seva.
Thank you for asking this. I think if you ask how do we do that, we're like a banyan tree. So the trunk is Seva, the union. The leaves are our 3 million members. And as I was saying, we believe that the workers become owners and managers. So for every service or a trade, the branch becomes the organization which has its own elected autonomous board. And that's how we work. So the branches take roots and we supplement and complement each other. No matter which direction the wind blows, the banyan tree, therefore, is able to stand firm for almost 5 decades till now.
Thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful presentation.
No, madam, I'm just...
okay, Rima Ben.
Yeah.
So we all are aware of the amazing work that Seva does, particularly at the grassroots. One of the challenges of ensuring that there is diffusion of innovation at the grassroots level is that the technology is appropriate. I mean, at some point there was a lot of talk around appropriate technology. So I was just curious to know Seva's experience of ensuring that it's appropriate technology.
Very good question, and therefore we at Seva believe that if you put technology in the hands of the poor themselves, they know how best to use it to their betterment. So to give an example, we're not against robotics, but can robots be used by the sewer workers, or can robots be also used by the waste collectors and recyclers? And that's the kind of R&D that we are working on. You need research and development not happening somewhere in some labs, but how can research and development also be taken at the community level? So we are setting up R&D centers within where the workers live. And what's the kind of the most appropriate technology that's needed? So today all our supply chains are digitized. The saleswomen have handheld devices so we can track the sales and the inventory management on real-time basis. All our savings and credit is digitized. So how many members have paid what kind of and what amount of savings, we have real-time information, and also money is fungible, so you don't want that, somebody has saved today and it reaches their account by the 3rd day or the 4th day. But how can you use mobile wallets to do real-time transfer? And all our 3 million members are also digitized. So we know how many members are renewing their membership in the union year after year. If they are not renewing, we can really track down that, you know, what's the reason? Is the union not serving them well, or we are not able to address their needs properly? What is the reason? So that's how technology. And then you have trade-specific technologies, be it in agriculture, be it in waste collection and recycling, how much of automation and mechanization so that it doesn't displace the workers, but it reduces the drudgery of the workers.
Questions? Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm very interested because 2 years ago, we worked on how the digital economy, especially the gig economy, has helped informal sector, especially women, to have more economic opportunities. So my question is, what would you suggest, or what are your recommendations to improve, or let me say, to promote decent work in online work, or maybe in other informal economy for women?
Great question. And I can give you two examples. One is we have Seva Bazaar, which gives market access digitally through online marketing platforms. And this throws out a whole new range of employment opportunities where the younger members of Seva, 40% of our members are young, age group of 18 to 30 years. And so they feel that, you know, since they are educated, they don't want to pursue the same trades or occupations. So this generates more of employment opportunities in photo shoot, in cataloging, in coding, and, you know, those kind of areas. So, you know, there is ample opportunity. We also see that how food and food processing, so from agriculture, building up your supply chain into agro and food processing. And we have Kamala, which are our food centers, where the food that's grown by the farmers, vegetables, fruits, pulses, spices, everything, it is cooked, and then we use platforms in our country like Zomato, Swiggy, etc., which provide home delivery. So you get home cooked food, and one plate of food that you buy at Kamla gives livelihood to 6 families, because everything that we make at Kamla comes directly from the farmers. And we don't use any refined flour or white flour or any preservatives. So it's fresh, homemade food. So I think there are ample opportunities for the informal sector also, but one needs to let them decide how they want to use the new opportunities.
Wonderful. There are, you know, of course, examples of Seva in other countries as well. Could you share with our members any insights of the experience in some of the other countries? You talked about Afghanistan, Maldives, and some other countries.
Yeah, I think the only one that keeps coming to me is in Afghanistan. We started working in Afghanistan way back in 2009, and we had a trade facilitation center in Afghanistan, and which was giving work and employment opportunities to close to about 15,000 women. And, you know, lot of growth and improvement in their standards of living. I think something has gone wrong with the system. And when we were also attacked twice, and we thought that that would be the end of our work. But the women bounced back and they said they would continue. And even today, with the regime change, we thought that this would be the end of the work in Afghanistan. But the women's enterprise is continuing. They really confront the regime. They find ways of getting permissions. Maybe all the women cannot go and work together in groups of 50 and 100, but they go in the groups of 7, 8. There are 2 Taliban representatives always there, making sure that They are only doing things which are permissible, but the work continues. So I think that's why we say this is regional integration, and this is how peace building happens, you know. I did not expect so many questions. I feel excited that people are listening.
Of course, this is wonderful. Yes. And you have so many case studies of different business schools, you know, in Harvard and so on. Yes, please. Yes, right.
So first, I want to say congratulations, and also, I think that sometimes we forget and we think that innovation is just talk about technology, and we forget that it's about like inclusivity too. So I come from Mexico, and I relate to the same issues that India has, like. Well, I think Mexico and Latin America in general, that we, when we talk about the workforce, we forget that more than 50% of the workforce in Latin America is women, and most of them are, you know, they're concentrated or focused on care, in the care, you know, in care activities, and at the end, we cannot think about how they can, you know, be integrated in the workforce until we actually hear their needs and hear what the services. So you were talking about care system. So I want to hear more about like what type of partnership model CY is like pursuing in terms of these to be sustainable, especially when you find that, you know, the support from government, not only national but even local governments, cannot be enough for this, and how do you manage that, and how do you achieve that not only in India but also like in other countries?
Thank you. And I think we believe that childcare is a fundamental right for every woman as well, because otherwise either she's not able to work for enough hours, or the other sibling in the house has to give up or, you know, sacrifice education. And therefore we started with from creche 0 to 2 years, and then the daycare centers as well. We also believe that everything that a member at Seva gets has to be contributory. Nothing has to be free, and therefore the member also contributes. So as a mother, as a parent, how do you contribute in getting the service? And then we also bring in, rather than creating parallel structures, how do you bring in the government's contribution, and also the traders or the contractors or the factory owners as well. So it's the tripartite approach that we have to make it viable and sustainable. And gradually the members' contribution keeps growing as she finds that the service is valuable, but we also make sure that it is affordable to her. And then we also bring contribution from the alumni. So the children who were at the daycare centers, who then went to school, to colleges, who are now, you know, into different professions. Some are engineers working in, you know, large corporations. Some are become government employees. Some are, you know, in certain other business houses, doctors as well. So they contribute to there because they realized that I was in this childcare center, and that is why I was fortunate that I could get, you know, quality education. They contribute annually also to the centers, and that's how we make care affordable and sustainable, and that's where we have a cooperative. And we have the similar model for elderly care. So we call it as the home care services. Both for the community, it's not that the home care is only needed by the better off in the urban areas, but in the community as well. That, you know, how do sick people in the community, or how do elderly in my own community get access to care services? So we have a home care cooperative, similar approach.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Is digital literacy or digital skills a challenge at all? And if so, how do you address those? And from a trade perspective, a cross-border trade perspective, how could better trade rules or policy help?
I think digital literacy is not a challenge, but affordability is a constraint. Digital technology keeps advancing and changing at a much faster pace, and therefore to keep up with having that changing access to that changing technology, if I have just managed to repay a loan to buy a smartphone, and then the model of the smartphone changes or the feature in a smartphone changes, do I get another loan to buy that advanced version, or the software? I just took a loan for a laptop, and then the software keeps changing, and very often the software is not available free. So that's, and then the connectivity in the very far off remote areas is sometimes a constraint. And to your second question on trade policies, frankly speaking, the trade policies are far away from the workers. They just don't know anything about the trade policies, and they just get impacted by the trade policies. So 2 years back, we just conducted a study on the bilateral trade treaties also that take place, and also the multilateral trade policies that and how it affects the workers in the informal sector. So if you're interested, I can share the findings, but they are completely unaware, and therefore I think these policies do not really look into the conditions of the labor and how can they make it more inclusive. So I'll definitely share with Rajatji, and maybe you can pass it on to whoever is interested.
Like you were saying, that they're not effective. Also, there's anxiety amongst cooperatives about what will happen to livelihoods. I don't know so much about Seva, but Amul, another big cooperative from the same region that Rima Ben is from, was particularly anxious about what would happen if India got into a trade agreement with Australia or New Zealand or even RCEP, and what would happen to the dairy sector. And there was a lot of fear and anxiety in those workers in that cooperative, which was one of the reasons that we didn't sign, because there was a lot of protest and agitation by the Amul cooperative, amongst others. Yes.
I have a question, because you have mentioned certain countries which are having a geopolitical issues with India. How do you manage that?
Very great question, and very relevant in the current situation. It's all at the political level. When it comes to people, women to women, worker to worker, absolutely no issues at all. But it's all at the political level that we have created these boundaries which are now becoming like big walls, and which are blocking integration, trade integration, or cultural integration. We manage still when we go to Afghanistan. I mean,
Yes.
they are so welcoming. They are so welcoming. You go to Pakistan, and even while going from the border to the villages, if you stop at the local tea stall, and the moment they come to know that you are from India, they won't charge you. You won't find that in India, but you would find that in Pakistan. So
No, that is true. That is true. That is my
we are
personal
so
experience.
money-minded, and that's why enterprising as well. But people there are so warm. I went to a cotton shop because Pakistani cotton is so well known, and didn't know that our credit cards won't work there. How stupid of me. And the shop owner was willing to just give it, and you can send the money. I mean, no shop owner would do that here. So I think it's people to people. I don't think we bring. We are more credible. Whatever is the reason, I think there was so much of contiguity that people see that we as a large family. And when women, there was this was 5 years ago. Nowadays, SAARC summit doesn't even happen. But at the SAARC summit, when the Prime Minister asked, we had a stall there as well. And there were women from all the 6 countries sitting. And when the Prime Minister from, 3 countries came and asked that, oh, you are from which countries? And the women replied that we are from SAARC. They could have said that, I'm from this country or I'm from that country, but that's the kind of feeling they have.
Ma'am.
Sorry, Munir from
Bangladesh.
From Bangladesh.
Wonderful work. How can we help you? I'll give you a simple example. When COVID was happening, we ran a digital cake, knowledge, information, content kiosk. There's a lot of misinformation going on. We have 1.8 billion people. So we translated into 15 major languages spoken in this region. We ran it in digital platform for 2-3 months. It got one of the award-winning program. So any digital platform-based advocacy awareness, we'll be happy to help. I'm sure my other colleagues are here. And what you mentioned about South Asia, I'm glad you did. Same experience. People to people is very different story. And Rajendra writes a lot of pieces, opinion pieces, his optimism, which I also continue to share with him. People to people is not, even you shared one experience, I'll give the reverse experience. In India, something similar happened. I was bringing this medical device for my mother. So what happened, same issue, credit card was not working. So the person who works in a hospital, it was about 40,000-50,000 rupees, which is not a small amount for him. So I asked him, Acha, if I don't repay, what happens? Because he was taking a risk. So I said, why are you trusting me? If I go back and don't, then what happens to you? So he looked at me and said, wo nahi hoega, aap dega. So I was sometimes so very calm. So
that means that won't happen, I will pay you. That's what he's saying.
So there are a lot of such lovely experiences we share. Only I wish our politicians would have ... whatever. Yeah. But we have to keep on pushing. So I personally will be happy to help. I'm sure my friends will. I'll give you my card. Let us know if any way we can help you. Keep up the good work.
You.
Great.
Rimaben, you mentioned a number of countries that you work in, but Bangladesh was conspicuous by absence. It's because they have a very strong network themselves.
Yeah,
right?
there is no point duplicating. Because
the
they have large organizations.
True, very.
Yeah. So Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel Prize winner, all of you know, works, of course. So there's no point yet. Other questions, please, if there are. Utkar, you have a question?
First of all, it's so great to hear you, ma'am. And I represent Shivnada IC. I look into investment and innovation practice. So my question is, organization like Seva, when you started, when you were a child, what were the obstacles that you faced as a developing organization? What were your priorities? Because when you work with people in a target geography, there are a lot of problems that comes in, because one problem is linked to another problems. So how do you focus on, 2 or 3 of them and then really create an impact around it and pay your way forward for like 10 years? We would be focused on that and deliver the impact.
I think the first and the biggest problem is our education system. So you have to unlearn everything you learned in a university and relearn with the community. That is what I think is a big challenge. We all think that, I will prepare a great plan and then go and implement it. But that's not what the community's needs or priorities are. Their issues or their needs would be very different. So how do you understand the needs or the issues of the communities? When I say my work, it's about women. And then start organize. That will inculcate a sense of ownership and belongingness. If we are able to address their needs or issues, there's no looking back. Then the organizing becomes very easy. I think the other challenge is the middle class of our country. They think that poverty is an issue of the poor. We have nothing to do with it. And I think I would again blame the education system for it, that we train the youth of our country to think that The world is elsewhere. This is the problem of the poor. We will all be pushed back if we don't make it an inclusive process. So I think this is what. And how do you accept voluntarily poverty? That's the thing we all have to. This will bring a lot of empathy. And if we are going to end, I would like to sing just once verse of a song which we always sing, which makes us give hope. I'll sing it in my language and then maybe one line in English, which I'm sure you all would make up. Hum honge kamyab, hum honge kamyab, hum honge kamyab ek din. ओहो मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन. We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in our hearts, we do believe we shall overcome someday. Thank you so much. I hope someday you all will arrange a summit with Seva.
Yes.
With the grassroots women members themselves.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Maybe in 2030, because you have plans till 2027. Thank you so much.
Shiba will present a token of our appreciation.
So this is something we have crafted out of university. We give this to all the dignitaries.
Stephen, why don't you come up and take a picture with Rima Ben? Yes.
Why can't we have one quick
Group photograph with Rima Ben.
Then we'll continue the panel.
Thank you, Rima Ben. That was lovely.
Please quickly, all of you can just join us and then be back with it, please.
Please, come. Yes, sit, please sit, yes.
I'm also in background, that's my fate.
Who? Without looking, I can tell who it is.
Do you?
Yeah.
We'll just manage to stand. It doesn't matter how artistically it is. All of you just join this stand. It will be just a memorable photograph, no matter where we are standing.
Okay, now we have to say GTIPA.
We're finally getting it.
Thank you, thank you.
We'll continue.
All right, we can settle down back. I just thought we'd take this bit.
Right.
No, we'll continue. We'll wait for 2 minutes. Yeah.
But I think she's able to address it when there's an emergency. And she knows that she's not alone.
एक दो तीन तीन माइक्स
माइक तीसरा हटा दिया ना क्योंकि तीसरा माइक से आवाज़ आ रही है तो हटा दिया तो 2 ही हो माइक 2 हैंडल
एक वो मॉडरेटर है तो उसको दे देते हैं
कॉलर दे देंगे
हाँ स्टीफन
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll also request all the delegates that couple of yours video bites are still pending. Our marketing team is eager to hear one line of how your experience was at GTIPA 24 with Shivnada University. So we might reach out to you. Yeah.
Yeah, give her one
All right. I think we can quickly wrap. Let's. Okay. So let's get back to our remaining session. And thank you, ma'am. I think I will words are not.
to the airport.
Okay.
Not right now, but I have a meeting and then catch a 5 o'clock flight.
5 o'clock, then you should. Thank you, ma'am. This is the cover to keep this. Sheila will help you. All right. Thank you, Rima, ma'am. And I think she has to rush for a flight. Ma'am, we'll just take a minute of yours for a video bite. Can the team do that, please? All right. We move to our next panel discussion. And all right, so we move to our next part of our day, which is a panel discussion on technology, commercialization, and legal navigation. And we have some very interesting discussion on legal framework, innovation, and how to commercialize and what could be the legal implications of all these things. We have here our panelists. Mr. Manas, can we have you on the dais? Ms. Apurva. So Mr. Manas Chaudhary, partner, competition law practice, Khetan and Company. Ms. Apurva Murali, partner at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and Company. And it would be moderated by Stephen Ezel. And one of our another panelist is Carolina. Carolina, can we have you?
So there's an on off button. You can make it on and off.
Okay. Well, all right. We're going to talk a bit about technology transfer, commercialization, intellectual property rights, and the IP landscape that enables innovation. I'm fortunate to have folks on the panel who are far more well-versed in these topics than I am. So I am going to start, if I might, by asking Apurva, and then Manas, and then Carolina, if you would just take about 5 minutes and tell us about your work, your experience in these fields, and then we'll get into some moderated discussion.
Do you like to go first?
Sure, Manas.
I would have liked you to speak.
Okay.
If you,
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
fine. So I am actually a lawyer, and I practice antitrust and competition law, which is of course having an interface with technology, more likely with the patents. And my job is to go and tell the authorities that this patent is causing a lot of economic efficiency enhancement. It is causing safe harbors to the innovator. And always a challenger would say that the patentee is abusing its dominant position. Because it's very easy for them to say so, because end of the day, patent is a legal monopoly. And it is conferred for 20 years in case of a patent. So obviously, a patent owner operates independent of competitors for 20 years. Question arises, it has also come out of a law. So will the law harmonize between antitrust and the consumer welfare, as well as the opportunities to the patentee? I try to defend most of the time whenever there is an opportunity is available with us. And generally it is now a very fascinating time in India, across the world also, that every antitrust authority and the economies of the sovereign countries, they try to come up with digital competition law, which is actually trying to squeeze the big tech companies more. So when I say big tech companies, I'm talking typically about the Googles of the world, Apples, Amazon, Meta. They are all being investigated across the jurisdictions. And now the landscape is changing very fast. The Digital Markets Act of the Europe is talking about per se illegal. They are saying, being a big in a technology market, I will have the right to investigate you ex ante, which means in the absence of a complaint, the authority can on its own start an investigation against a big tech on the premise of you are bad. So then the question arises, is the technology bad, or the conduct of the big tech company is questionable? I stop here. That's where, makes sense to sync with this today, which I have been attending as an audience. I find that it would be easier for us to interact meaningfully. I am in for harmonization of the problem rather than taking the problem forward. I stop here.
Thank you so much. My name is Apurva. I practice on the intellectual property side at Chartered Marshall Mangaldas. Effectively a little more upstream, in the sense that a lot of finding the niche with inventions, assisting startups, assisting technology creators with identifying which technology is protectable, assisting them in seeking statutory protection, and then post statutory protection, of course, the aspect of enforcement and of commercialization. That's primarily what I work with. I think some of the challenges we face is trying to find appropriate protection or appropriate mechanisms for protection of intellectual property, especially with startups. And a lot of challenges are because the technology grows at a pace much faster than legislation can keep up with it. So how can you find appropriate protection? How can you ensure that there is exclusivity that a person can enjoy in order to have commercial benefit? I think that's the challenges, and I'm happy to speak more on this.
Great, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolina Gane from Stuns, Sweden. And for the Swedish startups and scale-ups, of course, what has just been mentioned is an issue, especially in the area of deep tech, where we have been focusing this year. So we're trying to see how a lot of the research at the universities in Sweden has a potential to be the next startups and scale-ups in the area of deep tech. And then, yeah, I will talk a bit more about what could be the implications on that and what challenges and possibilities do you see?
Great. And, maybe to provide a little framing and context for this panel, my belief is that the most significant strength of the U.S. innovation system has really become that we have turned our universities into engines of innovation. And a lot of that came due to a legislation we passed in the early 1980s called the Bayh-Dole Act. This legislation gave universities and professors, faculty, students the rights to intellectual property that derived from federally funded R&D. And that mattered because before we passed this legislation in the 1970s, the federal government had commercialized less than 5% of the 30,000 patents it had title to. And so great technology, great science just sat at US universities because there was no channel to get it to the marketplace. And the Bayh-Dole Act, by extending and allowing intellectual property rights, has now created a pathway through which, since 1985, American universities have accumulated over 120,000 patents, 480,000 invention disclosures, and 15,000 startup companies coming directly out of American universities. And it's also of note that 40% of US universities now have a formal innovation incubator or accelerator attached to them. And so this has really been a powerful mechanism of startups and spin-off and technology formulation. A couple things we've done in America, and I want to ask, some of our other innovations here, like Stanford really pioneered this approach back in the 80s, but we now give students rights to intellectual property they create. We allow students and faculty to take entrepreneurial leave. So we've really increased the permeability between this rigid notion that you're just either in academia or in industry. We try to break down those barriers. So I'm wondering, and this is why it's so important to be with you here at the Atoll Incubation Center today, because this is what you're doing. So I'm curious if you could share in Sweden and India, how are your countries really working to empower universities to be engines of innovation and facilitating getting some of these new technologies out to the market?
From an India perspective, I think the way our legislation is laid out, or inventorship is inherently with the person who creates. So that puts some level of control in the inventor's hand, which is effectively a student or a faculty member. Of course, in terms of research which is carried out in the university, typically the arrangement that I have seen is that the patent application, let's say, for example, for an invention, the patent application is filed in the name of the university. But because the legislation is so stringent that you need to demonstrate how you have a proof of right from the inventor to file the application, it empowers the inventor to some extent because the application otherwise wouldn't go through. It wouldn't be in order for grant if you didn't have the authorization. So we are seeing a lot of situations where there is a co-ownership, because of course the university co-ownership in relation to inventions, and in co-ownership also because it's contractually there are arrangements that are putting maybe right to commercialize in favor of one party, or like for example, right to file the application maybe is in the name of the university, or it's filed in the name of both the parties, the inventors as well and the university. So this is one aspect. Separately, even under our legislation, if you were a co-owner, there are statutory rights that you have. For example, if you wanted to exercise, or commercialize the invention, you would need consent from the other side, or there are revenue sharing mechanisms that you can enter into. So because there are certain safeguards in the legislation, it also sort of leads the parties to have a contractual arrangement which may benefit both sides, because there is benefit to encouraging students to innovate, because eventually it's also benefiting the university, it's benefiting them commercially as well, and also it's benefiting them in order to demonstrate that innovation is a focus of the university. So those are some of the things from an India perspective.
So since she is specialist in IPR, which I am not, so what I can tell you is about a constitutional framework of India. The freedom to trade and commerce is fundamental right in India. However, there is a clause which says that it has to be exploited reasonably. Now this exploitation reasonably means the state can always create a law to see that there is no unfettered right to the party who is able to obtain the freedom of trade and commerce. Say for example, if I have got a right, first of all the question arises, is intellectual property ownership? The answer should be yes. How do you justify ownership on IPR? That means patent. So you have got a patent, which means that you have a right to exploit it commercially because you own it. Now the question arises, typically I am as a lawyer telling you a Hoffel's analysis test goes into the whole concept. If you have a right of an ownership, other fellow has a duty, also has a right. So you have a duty to see that others' rights are not infringed by your unlimited exploitation it commercially. So our constitution guarantees freedom of trade and commerce, provided the state has the last laugh. It can create a reasonable restriction. So that reasonable restriction at times may not be reasonable. That is what the lawyers will go and dispute. So the question is, intellectual property will have to be owned through the process of IPR. We are talking here, technology means mostly patent, design, semiconductor circuits, not trademark, not copyright, not geographical indication, because those are generally a very different kind of a sovereign technology kind of a thing, which perhaps may not be the area for us to discuss. But what I feel here, that ownership of intellectual property will have to be commercially exploited within the confines of certain rules, and those rules will be decided by the state. And the state will have to see that there is an equitable distribution between the ownership and its commercial exploitation. You cannot have an unfettered right to exploit, because many times it may so happen that the technology which you are claiming to be an innovative, non-obvious, and for the first time you have done it, others can come and challenge that you have actually, by reverse engineering, mimicked my technology and started commercially exploiting when I have decided not to do it for some reasons which I believe, as she said, there may be some commercial arrangement with someone who want to do it together by way of a cooperation, and by reverse engineering somebody else has come up and said that this is the date of priority of the innovation. And those things will have to be, state will have to step in and say. I can give you an example which I have myself seen in one of my earlier days in private practice. This basmati rice, which is a rice of India, which was being mimicked in South United States, and the gentleman who came up with the patent called it Texmati. So in the US, the patent is first granted, and then you have to get an opportunity to challenge, which is otherwise in India. You have to first remedy all their challenges, only then you are granted a patent. So one of my friends, he is an IPR expert, he went and challenged the patent Texmati in the US, and the question arose as to how are you saying the date of priority in India is much before the Texmati patent granted. And the gentleman did a wonderful research. He went to National Archives of India and got a Persian original translation into English, which is acceptable to the US courts, and proved that Nadir Shah came in India, invaded, and Shah Alam, the emperor of India, had served him basmati rice, and that Persian text has been translated into English, and the US court agreed that the date of priority is 1739. So that way, this is something which you have to really show that you own it. And unless you have that ownership, the others will always claim that I have the right before you. So then it has to be a balance between commercial exploitation and the ownership.
I think in Sweden we have had since far back, we've had that the researcher or the student owns the rights for their idea and simply owns the IP. And that have, in some ways, that have been a very positive thing, but also in other ways, when you're going for more capital in later rounds, some investors are unusual to see this, and they could sometimes say that, is this a very messy cap table, or why is this? So in some ways it's a bit different, but I'm very happy to say that the culture has twisted a little bit at the university. So as a professor, or if you have some students, or if you're a researcher, then the culture is that you're very proud if they do continue and build companies and commercialize your ideas. And that has not always been the way in our case. So I think that is really encouraging if we should solve some of the biggest issues that the world is facing right now. I think it's important that you're proud that this student or this researcher do go for their idea. So that I think would be a very positive thing. We do have tech transfer offices that helps the researchers and the students to do so. And we also have sort of smaller investment companies that are directly connected to the universities. For example, in the region of Uppsala, where I'm from, we have the Uppsala University Invest, and we also have the Swedish University of Agriculture. They have a holding company. And these companies could help start for the scale-ups and for the in the really early beginning. They could be help for these companies. So that's kind of this part of the Swedish perspective on the question. And they also have experts in IP and other sorts that they could have from the incubation centers and so on.
I'm curious, how have perspectives toward intellectual property evolved in India, say, over the past 20 years? And do you see an intergenerational difference? Do students and a younger generation that's creating, at locations like the Atal Incubation Center, do they take a different perspective on IP rights than perhaps older generations in India? So how has that landscape changed over time?
So India became TRIPS compliant in 2005, and I would say that in terms of recognition or awareness in relation to intellectual property has happened in phases. I would say maybe intellectual property such as trademarks and copyright were sooner to be adopted and sooner to be recognized. And it also flows from the courts, because the court system in India started recognizing value in intellectual property. There were enforcement proceedings which were seeing the right holder being able to enforce their rights, getting speedy remedies in terms of intellectual property. So courts were treating intellectual property as a separate variant as opposed to a general civil matter. I think that's how it started. Then, because there was enforcement that was happening, people saw value in investing in intellectual property. So our filings with the patent offices, with the trademark registry, started going up. So there were efforts made on the enforcement side as well. On the securing rights as well. If you see over the last, I would say 3, 4, or maybe even 10 years, there has been a significant increase in the number of examiners at the patent office, because there are more filings, people want speedy disposals. I would say maybe 2015, a patent grant would take 4, 5, 6 years, but today, a grant of patent, you can get it in 18 months, 24 months as well. So, there were a lot of adoptions which were done in order to speed up the patent protection process. if you look a little more downstream, if you look at a university level, lot of universities set up an incubation center which was also affiliated maybe with a lawyer, or had an intellectual property wing to it, where the value of securing statutory protection for your intellectual property was being emphasized. I know the IITs have it. This led to two things. One is students who were participating, who were maybe at the startup level, who were innovators, they saw value in intellectual property. Also, organizations which were maybe collaborating with the university and for a specific purpose or a specific outcome that they were looking for, research on a specific field, they had a little more probably awareness about intellectual property, which they passed on to the university and to the researchers as well. So that we've seen a lot of innovation which is happening in that sort of an arrangement, where there's a corporate which is innovating with a research organization or with a university for maybe a commercial purpose. But because there's a commercial purpose involved in it, there is also statutory protection which becomes very valuable, because exclusivity is something that you're seriously thinking about. And I would say patent, in terms of patent protection and enforcement, the Indian courts have done an outstanding job, because they are adopting, very cognizant of the fact that there is a lack of jurisprudence in India. They are recognizing approaches that have been taken in other common law countries and adopting those approaches, and which is putting us at the same pedestal, I would say, in terms of enforcement. So, when global companies are looking to enter India, they see some value that, oh, if I have some valuable intellectual property, it's going to get enforced if I do want to deploy it. And that sort of, I think, treatment gets mimicked even with Indian players, because they see that intellectual property has a certain value. You have commercial value to it. So yeah, I think that's how I would say it.
So, I'll just try to give two flavors to what Apurva said. One is that the intellectual property holder would always try to protect whenever there is a challenge, and more often than not, the courts would try to grant a stay against a person who is challenging the patent, which of course in Indian context, of course the minimizing the waiting period of course is a target, but at the same time it's there. So I can just give an example where I was involved. It was a challenge between an antitrust authority versus a patentee. So the two parties who came before the CCI, that is the competition agency, one is Monsanto, one is Ericsson, both of them said that you don't have jurisdiction. Because I own patent, how can you really look into my patent through the lens of competition law? So the commission did not listen to them. They went to Delhi High Court, challenging the jurisdiction of CCI, that CCI being a state, it does not have jurisdiction to look into intellectual properties. Delhi High Court, after listening to both the parties, stayed the proceedings in CCI. CCI went in appeal, appellate authority also stayed CCI. Now you imagine, September of 2024, we are sitting in November 24, CCI went in appeal before Supreme Court. Now to my mind, they shouldn't have gone, because the case is pertaining to the year 2014. It's relatable to an intellectual property relating to Ericsson means a mobile handset phone or something. Monsanto means agriculture. If you keep on fighting with authorities, you are actually missing the plot that your intent of implementing the legislation is actually way left behind. You are unnecessarily fighting an ego battle. So to my mind, Supreme Court now should really decide as to, in these cases, because also in intellectual property, in case of a technology, it can be one, but pharmaceutical it can be another. There can be very different concept in pharmaceutical. Say for example, the Indian pharmaceutical companies are facing huge problem in the US and EU, because whenever the patents start expiring with the patentee, the Indian generic companies are approached by the patentees that don't enter the market, I'll pay you. So this is typically pay for delay litigations in the US and EU. And in the process, the courts found that the generic companies and the patentees are colluding to harm the market, to harm the consumer. Because if a generic drug enters the market after the expiry of the patented drug, it actually is being sold at a cheaper price. Why should that not be allowed? So all these issues, are overlapping. And as Apurva said, that this is what the initial, in her opening remarks, I would say in India it's a challenge of domain knowledge also. Because the courts, so typical general courts, they are also sitting on civil matters and other matters. All of a sudden they are being handed out with a IP litigation. They might rely really upon many other jurisdictions to come to a conclusion, which at times may not meet the standards which the Indian economy would like to see. So it's a mix of, something which we have started, we are halfway through. It's much better than what it is. In 1998, India entered the PCT, Patents Cooperation Treaty. So from 1998 until now, it's almost about 26 years. So there has to be some improvement.
Carolina?
And in the Swedish case, I think this sort of like, we had a discussion on that yesterday, one panel on it yesterday, where the question was how much should you pursue and have your idea evaluated by a patent office, or should you just try to keep it as secret as possible? Since Sweden do not have that sort of manufacturing, when it comes to deep tech, we're often, since we're strong in like research such as materials, we're often, as in the case of battery production and so on, we're often like part of the value chain, and we're dependent on other parts of the value chain to either like verify if this material could be useful or in other ways. There have been a question that should we build like the gigafactories here concerning batteries or hydrogen, or should we like sell the license elsewhere? And I think that was also on the topics of yesterday, what it was concerning like semiconductors, where I found India, you design lots of the chips and you do lots of the software and the design of them, but you do not produce them. And I think Sweden is in the same area, but not in the semiconductor place, but in other places. So I think that is, how to handle patents and your ideas in that area simply.
And I'm going to ask Mark Schultz to help me think of good questions to ask to the panel to follow up here. Put your thinking cap on. And then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. But this is, being here at the university, what methods or practices work best to help students, especially, can kind of understand the importance and the potential of intellectual property for the technologies they're developing, and how can we better help them kind of evaluate their potential economically? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So from a student perspective, I think they need to think from the perspective of what is it that they want to protect, and also what is the liability out of it, because a very large part of startups going into the market with a product is being mindful, because costs are a very important aspect for them, right? So you also need to be mindful of what is out there.
How much does it cost to get a patent?
It compared to the US, I would say it's, in terms of cost, it's much lesser. It's a function of several things. It's a function of how many claims you have in your invention, how detailed your detailed description is. So but the cost is not so much in getting the patent. The cost is more in terms of maintaining the patent, because once you get a grant, you have an annual maintenance fee, which can very quickly add up. So in terms of patent protection, at least you have to be very mindful about which are the jurisdictions you're really looking at. So while if you're looking at India or the US or the EP, you need to be very specific about the jurisdictions you're considering, because the maintenance fee is what tends to become very expensive. But in terms of what I was saying earlier, in terms of when you're launching a product or going into the market, I think from a startup's perspective, not only should you be concerned with your product and the intellectual property value there, but also be mindful of what is already out there. Because a lot of smaller players tend to get hit by patent infringement litigation or by similar intellectual property in litigation, which can be the biggest detriment in terms of your growth. Also, because if you're a smaller entity, you're also looking at funding, you're looking at an investor, and investors see intellectual property related disputes or lack of a clear title as a significant hurdle when they're investing. So I think both ways, from a student's perspective, I would say that when you're looking at a product, not only are you should be looking inwards, but also outwards to see what your competitors are doing and so you know that you're not stepping on anyone's toes.
So my personal view is that it has to be harmonized, because all laws are sovereign laws. They have been passed by the due process of their legislative process. If we do not harmonize, and when I say harmonize, it is not the job of the courts alone. The people who are appearing before the courts through their counsels or the economists or even the professionals, they must have the backup story to help the court to understand. Intellectual property is a very complex subject, and with the standard essential patents, FRAND, all of these are coming into the space. The judges very rarely understand all of these issues, and we have to tell them as to what we really mean by these balancing acts. Similarly, as I shared in the very first opening remarks of mine, the entire 130 antitrust authorities are against the big tech companies. As late as yesterday, they have been now organizing a seminar to see how they can tame, I'm using the word, tame or discipline these big tech companies. If that is their sovereign mandate, then obviously we need to really go and tell the authorities that what you are thinking is not correct. They have spent a lot of money in R&D, they have had huge sunk costs, they have to recover their sunk cost, and they naturally need to commercialize their patent, or for that matter, their innovations. So this is what I think for every student, academia, we should really think about how best we can harmonize each law so as to the greater good is not lost.
In the Swedish case, we have organizations connected to the universities where you can get help with your ideas. So if you have an idea, you can come there and they will guide you through, both the IP, but also concerning when in the area of deep tech, it's often complex and you would rather need a very good team around you, so they could also set you up with a team or other very knowledgeable persons around you. So in the Swedish case, I would say that the best thing for students is to go and get help from there. We've also tried to, a bit outside of the universities, to also support innovation for younger people by having offices that do not only take these ideas from the university, the very high-end, so to say, ideas, but rather taking ideas from the society more. So we also have that type of offices where younger people can have help, and also, and then if IP is the way to go, they also have that support. So I think that really increases the will and the energy and possibilities for younger people to dare to become entrepreneurs, since it could be quite a bumpy road, even though you have help with it.
Interesting, because this is available for students specifically, or is it like a startup innovation? Because so in India we have, if you're going to file a patent application, you could get, if you're a startup and there is a criteria for a startup, then let's say the patent filing fee, the official fee, and the official fee at every stage is slightly lesser than what it would be for a regular applicant. So is there a similar structure for students as well, or is it just for
at first, I think in the context of Sweden, we'd talk a lot about the innovator. Okay. So in some ways, they might not even have a company yet, but we still can help them and try to build the company. So they do not even have to have a company as a start. So we try to help them from there. But concerning your questions, especially about fees and so on, I would like to be very clear with, I'm sadly not the perfect person to ask about that, but I do know that you can get support to do all the papers concerning your patent, but I'm not certain if you could also have subsidies for like applying for the patent, but to do it and to see if, should I be doing this, will I be stamping on someone's toes? You have the possibility. And yes, it's open for students, researchers, and so on. And it's connected most often to the universities.
Excellent. All right. I want to ask our members of the Alliance, because, again, the goal here is talking about helping students and helping universities commercialize their IP. Carlos, I know that you work on this in Colombia at your university. Welcome, if you might have any thoughts just on what you see in Latin America about how universities are helping students create new technologies and bring them to market.
Well, I guess we're watching different dynamics. First, some years ago, universities started to create their own offices for technology transfer, some sorts of incubators. It has not run so well as we expected in the university ecosystem, and now we are, let's say, starting to shift towards common offices for technology transfer and incubators that support several universities and dynamics in a region with the specificities, like focusing on the let's say capabilities in the region, in the cluster of universities, or in each specific area in which we are called to make the most that we can do for the region. For example, in my case, in the case of Bogota, where we are located, where we decided a focus on healthcare, because our university is intensive in healthcare, and then we support not only what we do at our university, but also several other institutions, several other universities. So joining efforts seems to be a better way to do it in not so developed and strong innovation ecosystems that like in Europe or the US. So this model is taking I would say a momentum in the region. So we are starting to see also in other fields, not only health tech, health for example, but then we have some other experiences right now emerging in agro, in technologies for communication, etc., throughout the region, and I guess that could be a good model for countries like ours with not such strong capabilities and resources at the universities.
Any other thoughts from the Alliance or questions from our audience? Mark is the one who I should have had the brilliant thought to ask to moderate this panel. I don't know what I'm doing up here. Mark is in a very interesting place because he teaches intellectual property, but I'm sure you have a lot of students at Akron who are trying to bring text to market.
Yeah, I guess I'll just make a comment, Stephen, about the role of intellectual property in technology transfer offices. So Stephen is very correct that the Bayh-Dole Act in the United States launched a revolution in universities engaging in commercialization. And the Bayh-Dole Act's, one of the Bayh-Dole Act's key policy interventions was encouraging and allowing ownership of the patents by the universities, that the universities and the researchers could own the patents instead of the US government when it funded the research. Okay, great. In some ways, one problem, and not only did that launch a revolution in the US, but it's been imitated throughout the world. There's sometimes an imperfect imitation, though, of technology transfer, right? If we think of technology transfer in terms of a university getting patents, then then the problem is many treat the patents as the end in itself, and that's their scorecard. And I've seen this, that this is and a good tech transfer office, an effective one, focuses on commercialization, commercial viability, education, capacity building, and the rest. And I've seen the difference between a poor tech transfer office and a good one. The university I'm at now is one of the was long recognized as one of the best in the United States at doing this, and in the world. At one point we were a top 50 university in the world for obtaining patents and launching startups in materials sciences. Now my old university, which I won't name, we had a tech transfer office, and the guy there used his budget to pay lawyers to get patents, and spent a lot of time at the gym, and he was not well revered. And yes, my fellow academics are chuckling because we always know there's a few people in any academic setting like this. But he could always, at the end of the year, he'd always point to the number of patents he obtained. But meanwhile, the university I'm at now and other effective universities, they spend a lot of time, first of all, identifying, working with faculty and the entrepreneurial community to identify things that can be successfully commercialized. So one of the persons in this office told me a great story about how a chemist came to him. Chemistry professor was very excited. He'd invented a new way to, I guess, create the color blue. From the chemist's point of view, he said, I invented a new color blue. And he said, well, that's wonderful. Does it have a use in industry? No, but it's new blue. Is it cheaper to make? No, I don't think it is, but it's new. Can't you get a patent for me? And they said, well, we don't think you can do anything with it. So we're not getting you a patent. But meanwhile, they do work with faculty to identify opportunities, and they have a large number of programs. And indeed, some of those are funded by our state, some are funded by the federal government, some are organized regionally with the private sector. I was just looking in my email in the last week. I've had 2 announcements that we're doing a pitch competition for our I-Corps program. The I-Corps program is funded by the federal government. They train teams of student entrepreneurs to do pitches, and they help give seed funding to them. And yes, the patent is all part of that, but it's the capacity building and the expertise in helping them find markets and either become entrepreneurs themselves, or if the researcher's not interested in being an entrepreneur, being networked enough with the entrepreneurial community and the larger corporate community to find the right vehicle for commercialization. So I guess as an intellectual property professor, I'm actually saying that counter to my interests in certain ways, that intellectual property is not the end in itself, it's just the vehicle, and you need everything around it to launch successful startups. So India should not count its, rate its ability according to the number of patents it got. It gets. Now, it's a good indicator that some activity is going on, but you don't want to be like the Chinese who have quotas for patents, and it's a centrally planned economy. And one of my friends, Mark Cohen, who's one of our US experts on Chinese IP, and he spent many years there, he says, the Chinese are incredibly inventive in the fall and the late winter, in the early winter. I don't know why that is, he jokes. He knows why, because the end of the year is coming. People have to meet quotas for getting their patents, and they file useless patents in order to meet their quotas. And then the Chinese government brags about how inventive they are because of the numbers of patents. That's not the goal. The goal, of course, is startups, which India is doing very wonderfully these years. But capacity building, I think, in the end. So sorry, I hope that wasn't too long of an intervention. But
no, that's great. Go ahead, Rajat. And I also want to know, one of the really smart things U.S. policy did was we did the Bayh-Dole Act in 80? And in 1982, we did something called the Small Business Innovation Research Program, which was essentially, it's a program of about $3 billion a year set aside for federal agencies to fund small businesses. But we did 2 things at once. Once we created the pathway for IP rights, we also created a pathway to finance these small businesses. and that was very catalytic in the ecosystem. So, and I also think we should spend a second talking about how we're getting finance and capital to scale these entrepreneurs.
So I just wanted to sort of take on from what Mark said in the Indian context. Apurva, so I haven't followed this debate about the Bayh-Dole Act, and I know that we were thinking about emulating, as Mark was saying, it's been copied in several countries. I don't know how far we've gone and how the effect of that Bayh-Dole Act in India has been to you. I don't know if you're aware of that. And Manas, I wanted to ask you about, so where is the debate now on, you talked about the collusion between the patent holder and the generic companies. Now there's some collusion there, and obviously there will be rents and there will be exchange of resources. But there was also, the courts in India also got involved in the evergreening debate. I don't know where that stands now. Does that still continue? I haven't followed this IP debate, but I think these are two big issues in India. I mean, the implications of the Bayh-Dole Act and, evergreening, and where's the debate on that?
In terms of, like I was, and we discussed this a little bit in the beginning, but I'm happy to repeat, is that the way the IP legislation is laid out in India is it's very inventor-centric. So if a student or a faculty member were to create an innovation, then they are the first owners of their intellectual property. Even under the Copyright Act, it's the author becomes the first owner of copyright. And interestingly, software is treated as a literary work under our copyright legislation. So because in terms of at least digital innovations, you get ownership sits with the person who innovates. There are of course some exceptions to it, specifically from an employer-employee sort of a scenario. But in a university where a student is innovating using the university facilities, the ownership would still be with the student. Of course, there are arrangements that are put in place well in advance to ensure that the university sort of has, at least universities which are sort of aware of their rights, they put these agreements in place where there is at least some share of revenue, recognition of co-ownership. There are all of these aspects that typically come in. But even in relation to government funded, the patent legislation doesn't make a specific carve out saying that ownership will sit with the government. But there are provisions in the legislation which permit for government usage. But it doesn't derogate from the right of the right holder itself. So there is, so in that sense, we're slightly different, I would say.
So I would defer the evergreening to her because that's a specialist. Yeah. So what I'll just answer to your question is that I'm relying upon cases, decided cases, and especially I'm talking about the US and the EU cases. So what happened recently, Glenmark is one of our branded generic companies. It entered with some kind of a collusion with Merck, that's a patented US pharmaceutical company, way back in 2012. The issue was Merck's patent with regard to a particular API was about to expire after the 20th year of the patent. And Glenmark was having a similar API and it wanted to enter the US markets. Merck and Glenmark, they actually came together and agreed between them. Of course, Glenmark Indian company had already filed a litigation which is called first to file. It is a typical US courts where you can go and say that I am about to enter the market with this same API which a patentee is holding and it is about to expire, say 3 months down the line. And 180 days are provided under a law which is called Hatch-Waxman Act in the US, that this generic company will be able to operate 180 days independent of this patented company. If it is able to gain market, and obviously the drugs would be far cheaper than the patented product, if it enters into a collusion, that okay fine, after 180 days I will not enter the market with the patented company which is about to expire, under US antitrust law it is collusion. It is a collusion between two competing companies which is causing harm to the consumers. And they have been imposed a penalty of $25 million as late as 6th of September 2024. So this kind of litigation by a court.
No, on whom?
On Glenmark. And this has also happened in Europe because Europe always mimics whatever happens in EU in the antitrust, they follows. So what they followed, they also started penalizing these branded generic companies of India. And that is what, is causing a lot of issues with regard to penalty cost to the Indian companies. And I'm talking about the big first top 10 branded generic companies of India who are having huge operations in EU and US. So this is an area which I think in India perhaps would not happen, because in India there are about 3,000 branded generic companies and we hardly have any patented drug company. So this is what is the antitrust issue.
Interesting, it's the bribe taker who is penalized, not the bribe giver. The bribe taker is...
You may, but the evidence was clearly on the part of the person who committed the offense.
I'll just note, we at ITIF would certainly agree that pay for delay is anti-competitive. We don't endorse that. What's often called evergreening, we actually think is much more often legitimate follow-on innovation, new formulation, new dosages, that if it is meritorious of meeting the steps of earning a patent, right, novel, useful and capable industrial application, then it deserves a patent. But that's a debate for a whole other day. Also, we can debate, but size is not a valid justification for the use of antitrust law. Antitrust should be about conduct and behavior of firms, not about their size. Okay, that's my editorial. We'll take one final question, sir, and then we'll wrap up this panel. So, question from you, sir, and we'll call it a panel. Thank you.
So I'll hand over to Jay, but first I have a... Yes.
Combine your questions,
So
please.
I want to utilize this opportunity since such an expert panel is here to consult on a pain point that we have here in the university, is that we have a legal office for the university, and then we have a IP firm that consults us for the filing patents or intellectual property for our startups. But what we have seen is it's very hard to, accelerate patent and, file the patents for the use case which can, benefit the company in long term. So it's really hard to, commercialize the patent or foresee the commercialization aspect of the patent when the company is very young or when the technology or the research is very young, which I think a lot of us share the same, a lot of universities share the same pain point. So I would love your views on that, how we can accelerate those commercialization things. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So I was going through an article wherein Winklevoss were there that who were failed to document the legal document, and Mark Zuckerberg take the entire codes and all. So looking at the things, like going ahead with the same question, like what suggestions would you like to give to a new startup, how to use the tools and invest in IP? Because the awareness levels are still very less in India specifically. So like how we can take it forward from there?
So in terms of innovating itself, I think if you're looking at commercializing your product, there is a mechanism under the patent legislation specifically where you can file a provisional application, which gives you a 12-month window to either decide on whether I want to file a complete specification. Because, okay, let me take a step back. Your patented invention, the invention that you file an application for will eventually get published, right? Which is when it falls into public domain. So there are mechanisms in place where you are given a one-year window where you can take a call on, do I want to go ahead with this or do I not want to go ahead with this? Now, that window gives you the opportunity to either finalize your invention or to decide to abandon it. And the benefit is that it doesn't get published. Your provisional application will never get published. So it's still something that you can maintain internally. Now, India is in the process of coming up with a trade secret legislation as well. So it's to be seen how beneficial that is, because then you can take a call on, do I want to, if something is really very unique in terms of the product, you can take a call on whether do I want to go for a patent protection at all. But in terms of what can you do, I think maybe you shouldn't think about the grant of your patent and your commercialization as something that has to, that the grant of the patent should be a prerequisite to your commercialization, because the idea is to ensure that you have the date of priority. After that, your commercialization's an entirely independent aspect to it. You're looking at a patent not as your right to commercialize, but the right to prevent. So even if you're sitting with a granted patent, do you have the wherewithal to go through an entire litigation? That's also something that you need to consider. So while you should be mindful about securing protection for what is the crux of your invention, your commercialization should be a slightly different approach. I think it can't be linked to the grant of your patent itself. And to the point that Mark said, that just because you have a patent doesn't mean that you're going to do very well commercially, because there are so many patents that are there out there which have probably never been commercialized. And you were talking about how do you...
Yeah. What suggestions do you want to give to the new startups to use the tools and invest in IP?
So, see, there are a lot of ways that you can sort of minimize your cost in terms of when you're investing in intellectual property. Like, the patent office provides you this opportunity where you can, reach out to their impaneled lawyers, and they'll help you in filing your application, drafting your specification. There are these kind of, which are systems which are put in place which you can take benefit of. But in terms of if your innovation if you have something really innovative, then I think the first thing you should do is file your provisional application, and then take that 1 year time to determine whether do I really want to go ahead with the invention, is there something else to it, or do I want to maybe abandon it at this phase and think about it later? Because the priority date, once it's gone, it's very difficult to walk back from that.
Yeah, and I would just say, as vitally important as IP is, you got to figure out if there's a real marketplace, if there are really customers out there. And probably on that, getting to market first at scale is probably usually practically going to be a more defensible position for a startup than what your IP is. It's not to say IP is not important, it's critically important. But you got to, it's not one or the other.
So the startups have to be smart enough to apply for these schemes at the right time and get the reimbursement at the required time. But yeah, the priority should be to file the patent at the priority date, and then of course these things take their time, but they'll get the money back. Yeah.
All right, well, great. Well, I think it's been a really enlightening discussion, and I want to ask you to thank our panelists for their wonderful remarks. Thank you. Great.
End of the day, it is the content. That is what is to be seen in case of a document.
Stephen, one photograph. I think my team also doesn't have a photograph with you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I think that was wonderful 2 days, and it's almost the closing time, but with us it's not the closing time. Maybe Dr. Rajat Kuturia and Stephen can give a closing note, but we have many things with you to do. So just after the closing note, we have a lot of exhibit stalls who are eagerly waiting. As soon as I go out and they ask me, when are the delegates coming to us? When are they visiting us? So So I think we should take another 15 minutes, just have a look what they have on the display. And right after that, we can have some just like nice meal waiting upstairs for you. We can take that up, and then we have some electric bus of our university. I hope you'll like the ride. We'll take you around the labs, and you can, yes, lab tours. If you have some specific detailed discussion, we can take up the note and connect you the faculty later and quickly take this up, because I think the labs are multiple labs and we want you to show the stuff. So we have made some time duration of 10 minutes, 5 minutes like this to visit these places. And we hope to visit the butterfly garden also. That's what in the plan, and come back like to your bus. So that's it. So over to Dr. Katuria and Stephen. Maybe both of you together can say a closing note.
After you. Well, again, I think it's a really hearty thank you to our wonderful and gracious host here at the Shiv Nadar University. Was remarking to some of our fellow panelists that over the past year I've been in places like Mexico and the Dominican Republic, and it's just so wonderful to see these universities, to see these entrepreneurs, people who are waking up every morning and trying to make the world a better place. So it's been really wonderful to be here with you in India and see the energy, the passion for creating a better future and really making India the innovation hub of tomorrow. So we've learned a lot, I think, from your innovation system and your culture. Hopefully the exchange of knowledge has gone two ways, but it's been a wonderful couple of days here in Delhi. So thank you so much to Shiv Nadar.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. And I must take this opportunity also to thank you and the Alliance for giving us the opportunity to host you. It's been an intense 2 days, I think. We still remember Secretary telling us about what the government is doing for innovation, and yesterday it was a great day. I think we spoke about a lot of things, and even today, a lot about innovation. So one thing all of you will probably take away from India, what you've seen, and what you've not seen. You've looked at innovation at the very highest level. Rima Ben talked to you about grassroots innovation. The Cambridge economist Joan Robinson came to India in 1960, sometime in the 60s, and said, what you see in India at a point in time, what is the reality or what is true, the exact opposite is true at the same time. But what you've seen, I think, in the last 2 days, as I was saying, so innovation, and India is sort of at the frontiers in certain sectors that Montek was speaking about on digitization and Silicon Valley, what Richard spoke about. So there are innovations that are happening. 23% of all semiconductor engineers are Indians or have Indian origins, etc. So that's one part of India that you've perhaps seen at Taj Mahal Hotel and in Lutyens, Delhi, and probably at the university, which is funded by India's third largest, richest man, and so on. So that's one part of India. Rima Ben sort of gave you a picture of what is happening at the grassroots. But there is another India. There is probably another Mexico, like there is another Argentina, and perhaps another United States, which we haven't seen. And you've read about that, but that is also a reality. So a lot of the innovations and a lot of the things that we researchers speak about in India, especially when you were speaking in the local context, has to confront that reality, which sometimes is different. And as I was saying, the opposition to trade integration, the opposition to global value chains, the opposition to intellectual property, that comes not from an ideological stand that people often take, but it often comes either from a lack of awareness, but that's not a good enough explanation. It also comes from confronting their own reality and what would it mean for them, because policy often, as we know, as Montek was also saying, in his imitable, articulate way, that it creates winners and losers, and and losers often oppose. But what I hope you take back with you experience of it. I mean, I know, like Gogo was telling me last night that she's come here for the 5th time, 6th time, and I'm going to invite Gogo to come and speak to our IRGS department in March. There's nobody from the IRGS department. We have an international relations governance studies department come and speak to us so that we can develop collaborations. And likewise, we at the university would be very open to the idea of collaborating on any level, whether it's a think tank, whether it's another university, student exchange, faculty exchange, whatever. So this alliance really not only gives us an opportunity to showcase what we have, but also to learn from the experiences that you as an alliance bring to us. And we remain eternally grateful for this opportunity, Stephen, that you've given you. And I will be completely, amiss, because I've been sort of, at the head. Often what happens, you delegate so much. You said, okay, Shiba, why don't you do this? And Rupali, why don't you do this? But let me tell you, I mean, Shiba and Rupali have literally, and that team, they've burnt the midnight oil. I'm not joking. They've actually done that in order to. Yeah, you know that. Yeah, and they've been absolutely stellar behind the scene. Remember what Simon and Garfunkel said at Central Park? I still remember that. We have to thank people behind the scenes you don't know, but the guys who are roaming around selling loose joints. I'm not talking about loose joints, but they haven't sold loose joints, but they've done everything to make this Central Park a great success, and I think it's been a success. To me, it's been a great success. And Shiba, why don't all of you stand up? Rupali, Shiba, the entire team. Follow me. Everybody, the whole team. So they've done tremendous work. So thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this opportunity. I think we learned and we had some wonderful experience which we remember for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we can go and see the exhibits. Yes. Thank you.